Donald Trump is panicking, really panicking now that the state visit is over. And I'm so glad that this whole thing that I was really afraid about, that, King Charles will go and he'll get insulted by the idiot. Although insults were there, if you saw some of the videos where King Charles, all these dignitaries lined up, and King Charles was supposed to shake hand with them, as usual, Trump the maniac moved forward and he started shaking hand himself, and Charles was left on the side like a little man in the corner. Again, insult, just like he did with the Queen. So he's done it again. And on a number of occasions, he's done the same thing over and over again. He was given a total script and told, don't deviate from the script. This is what you read. But even then, he managed to bring in the stupid Iran wording, and the fact that he's won when the whole world knows that he's fucked up in Iran altogether, and he's got no plans how to deal. I mean, typical Trump. He's going to leave the blockade as it is, let countries suffer, let the world economies ruin, and he's hoping that from all these blockades they would start coming for oil towards Venezuela, and for Venezuelan oil that he would love to sell, and the American oil. But let's see what happens, because Iran's not going to just sit there and let him block Hormuz for too long. And whilst all this is happening, I want you to see something. And it's not just me. Yeah, it's not just me. It's even the Americans saying it. You ready for it? Don't go away. Listen, it's good for your knowledge, okay? You need to understand the world politics. Don't take your fucking brain back to God and have the ability to say, God, look at it. My brain's come back in fucking mint condition. I learned nothing. I did nothing. I struggled all my life. I went with nothing and I came back with nothing, including a mint condition fucking brain. Excuse me. Get ready.
Trump is panicking as the state visit from King Charles is over, and Trump's efforts to distract from his catastrophic war in Iran have utterly failed. The American people are absolutely livid. Now, Donald Trump is blowing up at his own generals as he tasked his generals and intelligence officials to come up with a plan, I kid you not, for Donald Trump just to declare once and for all a unilateral victory, remove all of our aircraft carriers away from the Middle East, and pretend like nothing had happened, and then just
but
see
keep the blockade.
if the world can kind of sort itself out. Would that work? How would Iran respond? To which Donald Trump's generals and intelligence officials said, that's not going to work out, Donald. You have to make a decision here. Do you want to escalate and send ground
Oh, he doesn't like
troops
to
in
make
and
decisions
actually go back to
because
a
he was
hot
pulled in
war?
by fucking Bibi.
Or do you want to negotiate with Iran, Donald? And that means you
He
have
tried
to make
negotiating, but he
concessions.
didn't go anywhere.
What is your choice? But just pretending that you won the war is not a solution here. And then Donald Trump is like, you know what I want to do? Let's just keep the naval blockade. And I won't say, unilateral victory. Just keep the blockade by the Persian Gulf, and we will exert more pressure that way. And then our generals are like, that's not going to work. And Donald Trump's like, that is going to work. We're just going to leave the naval blockade. How long are you going to do that for, Donald? Forever. It's not even going to matter until Iran blows up, right? And then Donald Trump state regime media, which calls
What a fucking idiot.
And he even hinted at some of these conversations that are taking place right now, where he's like, okay, Iran's
talking to Russia
because the oil pipelines in Iran will be so filled with pressure, the way mechanical engineering works, it's just going to blow up the country. Well, according to what Donald Trump
does he know about
Sunday,
except pedophilia? He knows nothing.
And obviously, that didn't happen. So now American intelligence officials and our military generals and admirals are leaking to the press that Donald Trump's plan to keep a naval blockade in place for months potentially and do nothing and just see what happens.
And just blow money.
The worst plan possible of all of the worst plans.
He's not going to be. The government won't sanction the money.
Ironically, Axios, which has been propaganda stenographer media for Donald Trump, just literally posting whatever the hell he wants to manipulate the markets, they're now getting information from sources inside the Trump regime trying to leak Donald Trump's dangerous and catastrophic plans. U.S. officials are now telling Axios they're concerned about getting drawn in to a frozen conflict of no war and no deal.
Stalemate
In this scenario,
conflict.
the U.S. keeps its forces in the region for many more months. Hormuz would stay closed and the U.S. blockade would remain. I guess kind of like the way Donald Trump handled COVID. Just pretend it's not
Yeah,
real,
drink
like
bleach.
a miracle. It's
It'll
all
all
gonna
go away.
and then let someone else in the future deal with the catastrophe. Because you see what Donald Trump does? Donald Trump figures out during the most catastrophic of moments, when people are suffering the maximum amount, that's when Donald Trump, the two-bit vile piece of trash con artist that he's been, the scumbag that he's been his entire life, he feasts on people's suffering, and that's where he blames people. Who's going to be his Dr. Fauci? Who's going to be the person that he can put it all on? Why don't the arsonist put it on the firefighter? Who's going to be his former President Biden? Who's going to be his Jerome Powell? Who's going to be his James Comey, right? This is what this guy does. And he finds people suffering, and then he waits and waits. It wasn't me. And then he blames other people. Now, that leak to Axios followed the Wall Street Journal reporting that Trump's just going to stick with the blockade, which is, in effect, a decision to not make a decision at all. Trump will wait. We'll see if the blockade works. Not like the people here are suffering or anything. And then Donald Trump feels, look, Iran's facing economic pressure, so maybe they break. You think you're going to break Iran when after
No fucking chance.
Engaged in the invasion with Netanyahu in Israel, they didn't break then, and Aragchi's hanging out with Putin right now, or he was hanging out with Putin.
Iran will start throwing bombs on Israel again, mark my word.
The weird thing you were doing with King Charles while you were hiding the bruises on your hand with the makeup, while you were grabbing Melania's backside on camera, while you were there just, behaving like a freaking monster and a weirdo. Putin was meeting with Foreign Minister Aragchi of Iran, coming up with strategic plans, and Iran, what they've been utilizing this time for is digging out all of the weapons that may have been buried under some rubble based on the strikes by the U.S. and Israel. Iran right now is rapidly manufacturing the Shahed FPV drones and ballistic missiles. They probably by now have replenished all of the missiles that
they already had plenty. They're stocking even more.
The economy right now is working to prepare for
$5,000 a pop only
of this war, and they have
versus American millions of dollars each popper.
In fact, Donald, remember Prime Minister Takaishi from Japan and her visit to America and your visit to Japan, where she acted all nice to you? Remember, she even helped you walk straight because you can't walk in a freaking straight line anymore? Remember that when you visited Japan? Well, guess what? Japan just cut a bilateral deal with Iran that Foreign Minister Aragchi was basically bragging about by making social media posts to point out when Japan broke a British blockade in the about 60, 70 years ago or so, and how now Japan has cut a deal with Iran to be able to take Gulf oil, go through the Strait of Hormuz, and see you later, alligator. Japan's bringing their oil to Japan right now. They're desperate for oil, but Japan cut a deal directly with Iran. And so, the Wall Street Journal reporting that Trump has instructed aides to prepare for an extended blockade of Iran, U.S. officials said, targeting the regime's coffers in a high-risk bid to compel nuclear capitulation. Tehran has long refused. In recent meetings, Trump opted
Russia and China will fund them,
squeezing Iran's economy,
just like you
oil
fund
exports by preventing shipping to and from its ports. He assessed that his other options, resume bombing or walk away from the conflict, carried more risk.